It all started with the idea that comes from another great writer, George Orwell, who used to say that all art is propaganda, which means that every piece of art has a political and social message, even when the artist doesn't know it or doesn't want to pass on a political message. But art is, again, an instrument to understand the world around us, and it does say something about politics and our society and the way we live together. I would like to apply this methodology and this idea to understand how the West at the moment is embracing war as something inevitable.
Hi, I'm Zim Okora.
And I'm Claire Corbold.
We're a couple of academics with a passion for US politics.
And a mission to find meaning in a world that often defies it. This is Presidency Upending. Okay.
Welcome to episode 2 of Presidency Upending. I had the opportunity to interview Adriano Tedde, who is a lecturer at the Deakin campus in Canberra.
Unfortunately, I had to miss this recording with our colleague who was visiting Melbourne just for the day because I was away for a family emergency. But this means I get to hear it fresh. So Zim, tell us, what have you been up to this last week or so?
Well, I've been preparing for a trip to Vietnam, which is actually happening tomorrow morning, very early. I'll be part of the Deakin International Road Trip. We're promoting Deakin University in an emerging market, and we're hoping to sell Deakin and explain the many good things that the university does.
And how do you do that?
Well, we have some stock standard presentations. I, as an academic, will give a demonstration to students both at school and at a local university in Ho Chi Minh City. And during my presentation, I'll present some material that I use during my teaching of US politics, actually. I designed this little interactive exercise. I call it Constitutional Hardball, and it aims to unpack the problems that arise whenever the norms of a democracy begin to break down. How does that happen and with what consequence? And the key observation that comes from that is that norms are fragile. They take a long time and a certain political sentiment and indeed culture to construct. And they can be torn apart quite quickly, especially whenever attitudes and behavior become polarized. So those are the insights that we're hoping to draw out of that.
That's so. I wish I could take your units, your undergrad units. So much of it is faith, right? It's a shared kind of faith in structures and systems. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a shared set of expectations which need to be fulfilled in order for those expectations to then play out in the next round of the game.
Well, I hope the trip goes well. I've never been to Ho Chi Minh City. I've been to Hanoi, but not to the south. I'm a bit envious.
Okay, well, tell us what you've been up to.
Not going to Vietnam, but I've just decided to step down from an administrative role that I've held for the last 4 years so that I can return to my, first love really, which is just a rank and file teaching and research academic, and particularly to return to undergraduate teaching, which includes the unit African American History from Slavery to Black Lives Matter, which is a unit that has been taught in Australian universities in one form or another. And one day I'll write about this, I think since 1981.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's been a constant. I know at the University of Sydney and University of Melbourne they've taught it since the 80s, and when I moved to Deakin I was able to introduce something here as well. There had been something in the past, but not for a little while. And it's really, it's a unit that I love to teach because I know the subject so deeply, and students bring all kinds of different knowledge to this unit about race and racism in the United States, about music, about politics, and, of course, a deep knowledge, many of them, about Australian comparisons.
Yep.
It's a great unit to teach, and I'm really looking forward to being back in the lecture room and the seminar room.
Okay, well, congratulations on the return to the seminar room.
Thank you. Yeah.
That is quite a cauldron that you've described. It means we've got a bit of history, culture, politics, Australia's.
And we start in the 17th century and we end in today. But,
wow.
It is a survey unit. I mean, you can't teach everything in there, but and try not to touch on everything either. It's too much. But, a couple of key themes around the way that the United States is full of contradictions, right? It's the land that is was based on an overthrow of monarchy and the idea of a representative democracy, and yet has always had this deep problem of racism and inequality. But also the unit is as much about the way African Americans have forged their own lives and communities. I mean, always in relation to that, but also sometimes independently of that. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to.
Okay, how exciting. And it's fortunate for our students that you're back in the classroom.
Oh, thanks, Zim. Yeah.
Though it's unfortunate for our administration that you're away from the meeting rooms and the committee rooms.
It'll be good to have someone else. 4 years is a good stint.
I think it's poetic that your term aligns with the duration of a presidential.
Yes, I do have aspirations in that direction.
Rather than a congressional term or the tenure of a Supreme Court justice.
I spent 6 months as a primary or elementary school student in Houston, Texas at the age of 9, but I was not born in the United States, so everyone, you're safe from an American presidency from me. All right, now we're just getting ridiculous. All right, let's move on. So Zim, tell us about your conversation with Adriano.
It was a fascinating, multi-dimensional conversation. Adriano is a really engaging academic personality. He spoke about his research on culture and its relationship to politics. Now, that's a relationship I haven't thought much about. I've thought a little bit about culture insofar as I like movies and books and other cultural things. For my day job, I'm also kind of interested in politics. But that particular nexus between culture and politics, he unpacked it really powerfully. And he showed how thinking about American politics as culture and using kind of cultural frames and cultural narratives helps us make sense of a lot of American politics.
Oh, how interesting. Well, I can't wait to hear it. Well, like our listeners, I am excited about it, and we hope that you enjoy this second episode of Season 2 of Presidency, Upending.
It's a pleasure to welcome our expert guest, Adriano Tedde. Dr. Tedde is a lecturer in Strategic and American Studies at the Center for Future Defense and National Security, a unit within Deakin's Faculty of Arts and Education. Welcome to the show, Adriano.
Thank you, Zim. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. To begin with, let's talk about your current role at Deakin, because you're not based in Melbourne or Geelong, like most of the university staff, but in Canberra. Tell us about that.
Yes, I am part of a small team of Deakin colleagues, an academic team there. In Canberra, we are involved in a master's program that's offered to the people of Canberra, meaning public servants and practitioners from the government. So our students are not undergraduate or post-undergraduate university students, but people with careers in the machinery of government.
In public service?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. And what courses do you teach?
I teach 2 units, one on American domestic politics and foreign policy, and another one on Australian statecraft.
Very interesting. I can imagine that there must be a lot of interesting conversation between yourself and those involved in the machinery of government here in Australia when talking about American politics, especially.
Oh yes, there's a big interest in America at the moment. When I started, America was always an interesting topic, but I think from January this year, the interest has grown.
Yeah, I found the same. I teach US politics here at Melbourne, and enrollments have been absolutely strengthened by the Donald Trump presidency. So yeah, he's had many effects, including on undergraduate enrollments. Let's talk a little bit about how you've ended up where you're sitting. Have in mind your journey into academia rather than your journey from Canberra to Melbourne. Because before your academic life, you worked in the real world as a diplomat. How did you move between these worlds, and what are the biggest differences day to day?
Look, they are separate, different worlds, but they meet sometimes. So it's not rare to find academics who get diplomatic jobs, especially in multilateral organizations. And it's also common to find diplomats who teach subjects of international politics in universities as well. But they are 2 different worlds. My own experience was the experience of a young person who entered the public service with a lot of idealism and big ideas, and I wanted to see the world. And I also wanted to be an instrument for a foreign policy that I perceived as an instrument for dialogue, collaboration, and the promotion of a peaceful planet. And it's been a wonderful journey. I've been to many different places, but the day-to-day reality of diplomacy was really that of a administrative office job. And I've always had some intellectual curiosities, and so academia for me was the natural next step to take to satisfy that curiosity. And through academia, I was able to put names on aspects of life and politics that I witnessed while I was working in the real world, as you said. And I couldn't really grasp, and academia helped me understand what I saw and gave it a name again. And so maybe this job is not as adventurous as diplomacy. The day-to-day is, less adventurous, but to me it really satisfies this intellectual curiosity that I have, and I'm happy with that.
Well, I'm glad it's all worked out, and you've had the adventure, and now you get to satisfy your intellectual curiosity, the best of both worlds, you might say. So let's talk about your research and your writing. And one of the major themes in that work is the connection between popular culture and politics. I'm sure many of our listeners will have some idea, maybe a good idea, of what we mean by popular culture. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming movies, literature, and the like. And they'll have some sense of what is politics, so institutions, actors, ideologies, etc. But the connection between culture and politics, what exactly is that? And could you please unpack it a little bit for us who haven't thought about that particular connection?
The connection really goes back to a basic human need for shared beliefs, shared values, shared narratives, symbols, myths. So culture is the result of a complex set of ideas, principles, again, beliefs, but also traditions, behavior, habits. And it's something that belongs to all human groups, from small congregations to big civilizations. This is how we function through culture, through all those shared messages, stories, values that we understand. And culture is also something that continually evolves. Maybe we don't see it on a day-to-day basis, but it does evolve. And with time, it provides us with the keys to understand the world we live in, what's around us, and a way to interpret the society and the life we lead. Politics is part of that. It's part of this big picture. So politics is another set of ideas, beliefs, and values that are specific to one activity, which is the exercise of power and the regulation of human coexistence, how we can survive together. So that's the link between the two.
Beautiful. So you see culture encompassing politics. Politics is within culture.
That's how I understand it.
Okay.
And in the specific case of the United States, the thing that I find fascinating about that big country is that the birth of the Republic 250 years ago is linked to culture. It's linked to ideas, the big ideas of the 18th century, the individual freedom and people's sovereignty and all those beautiful things. And so we could say that America really is a cultural experiment.
An experiment in an interesting place at the moment. There's so much about that I would love to interrogate, but I don't want to dwell on the many questions that you've provoked, certainly in my mind. I would just be curious to know what within that cultural framework that you've really nicely articulated are you working on at the moment? Like what particular projects are you committed to? And also, how do you go about investigating politics through culture? How do you do that research?
I'll tell you about what I've done so far, and then I can add something about the ideas that I have for my next project. But I wrote a book about social marginalization in America through the examination of works of art. This is what I call them. I studied the novels of a writer called Paul Auster and compared those to the films of a filmmaker called Jim Jarmusch and a musician called Tom Waits. So I put those three artists together, and the question was, does the storytelling and the body of works of these three men say something about America? And I did that by putting together different plots, different characters, but also analyzing cinematography and soundscapes. That means the aesthetic of a song or a film, putting those things together to make sense of a country that in the past 50 years has evolved, has gone through the last decade of the Cold War into the unipolar moment of undisputed global power, then onto the crisis that we're seeing now, a social, political decline that is emerging in all its fury and turbulence. And in the book, I say many of the things that we're seeing now were already told in the stories of these three authors. And it all started with the idea that comes from another great writer, George Orwell, who used to say that all art is propaganda, which means that every piece of work, every piece of art has a political and social message, even when the artist doesn't know it or doesn't want to pass on a political message. But art is, again, an instrument to understand the world around us, and it does say something about politics and our society and the way we live together. I would like to apply this methodology and this idea of using art as an instrument to understand the world we live in, to understand how the West at the moment is embracing war as something inevitable. And there's a series of questions that bother me at the moment. I am one of those lucky people who spent the best part of his life in a peaceful and Pacific Europe. And so I'm wondering, how is it possible that there is a sort of a collective loss of memory of the lessons from the 20th century? What kind of culture is that? Where is that coming from? So I am yet to analyze a series of cultural artifacts to give an explanation to this question that I have.
Fascinating. Thank you. So again, I have many more questions. Just a couple of follow-ups. So is your suspicion that reading cultural artifacts helps you to see into the future, that the writers have great foresight, or is it something else? What is it? What resources, leverage does reading cultural artifacts bring to this problem as you presented it?
We always have this great illusion, and we certainly have that in academia, which is that the more we study, the more we learn, the more we grow our knowledge, the more we get closer to predict the future. And I don't think that's correct. We can't.
Okay.
But there is one thing that we can do, which is understand human behavior. Why we do certain things, when, and sometimes things are completely irrational and chaotic, and we can't really explain them. But it's good to know that they happened. This is why we study history, we study politics, and many other things. What I think a literary text does more than the academic treatise is it talks to the core of what it means to be human. It investigates the human experience. So it tells us something about emotions, faults, qualities, virtues, but also the big flaws of people. And it does it through a personal, intimate examination of that I think adds great value to that knowledge that I was talking about before, the catalog of facts and things that we learn through studying history or other disciplines in the humanities.
thoroughly persuaded. I mean, this idea of thickening our understanding of humanity and understanding, what supersedes rationality, what comes before, and in a way is precedes and is deeper than rationality. These are interesting and important questions, something the cultural perspective really provides a lot of penetration on. But I'm going to return to, the very nagging question that people must ask you, in spite of your nuanced qualifications about not predicting the future. What are your thoughts, albeit tentative ones, on where America may be headed? What does Adriano think whenever anyone confronts him with this question, as I'm sure they do in Canberra from time to time?
I guess most of the questions that are asked come from the news, from what people are seeing right now in America. So the first question is, what is happening and why? It's so strange. It's we couldn't believe that a thing like that could happen in America. But what is happening, again, can be explained in a million different ways. One way is we've heard a lot about culture wars.
Yes.
And again, this idea of culture. So we have two belief systems there, opposite, with very strong ideas, both, I think, entrenched in what you may call a Puritan tradition. So the idea that we know what is true, we know the truth with a capital T, and they clash. They don't meet. They clash. The problem is that those culture wars that have been going on for quite a while now, possibly 50 years, have entered the realm of politics. They clogged the political machine. So what's happening is politicians are using their powers to fight that war, the culture war. And that's a problem, because by doing that, they step away from politics' first goal, which is compromise, which is finding a solution for the good of everyone, finding what's good for everybody, to preserve and promote common good. But when politicians are elected and they think that they have a prerogative to silence or attack their opposition, then it's not politics anymore. Again, it's culture wars. So that's one explanation for what's happening there.
Fascinating. We were talking, I was thinking about what you said earlier about politics being part of culture, and I thought to myself, well, in a sense, maybe we want to protect politics from culture, and we want some separation of politics and mass culture, particularly insofar as it is a war between different variants of that are puritanical in their own way. This might be a good thing. The culture of politics, one of compromise, coordination, problem solving, pragmatism.
Yes,
is different. How do you react to that? Is that a realistic aspiration?
We have tried, but that is called technocracy. It's not called politics anymore.
Okay.
The idea that rational thinking and good norms, laws, exact scientific theories and principles can lead us to that. And there's another fascinating stream of literature there that we now call dystopian literature. But you read books like 1984 or watch a great film like Alphaville, and it's about that. It's giving power to rationality because we think that's the best society that we can create, just stepping out of this mess that is culture, tradition, and all this stuff, this burden of the past, and make it scientific, clean, neat. But then that stream of literature tells us, look, it's not a utopia, it's a dystopia, it's a nightmare. And technocracy inevitably turns into authoritarianism.
Right.
So politics is culture.
Yeah.
We have to manage it. We have to make sure that, again, we respect other cultures and understand that there's a validity in everybody's reasoning, choices, beliefs, and again, the work of the politician, I believe, at the very core is find a common ground and a compromise for those different cultures and different ideas.
including the technocratic as well as
Absolutely.
other.
We need the
themes,
technocrats,
yes.
but to tell us, how to turn on a computer, not how to lead our day-to-day
Not to make
lives.
big choices over
Yes.
our values. Okay, fascinating. And long term, what do you think is happening in America?
Look, again, prediction is impossible.
Yeah.
But we can certainly look at what happened. In the past 50 years, I think America went through I call it a neoliberal transformation, but we can call it in many other ways. But America since the 70s has gone through a cultural change and political change that was led by certain economic ideas that we can call neoliberalism. Without going into that, we can look at the bigger picture and not just the past 50 years, but 250 years of the Republic experiment. And we can think of America as an idea rather than a nation. In the West, in Europe, nations find their identities in history, in what happened in the past. In America, there is a history, of course, but in America, that identity is not rooted in history, rather in ideology, in the big ideas, again, that I mentioned before, freedom, democracy, and equality. So if we consider America as an idea, every time that idea goes through a crisis or is put under pressure and questioned, then America suffers. And we have seen that many times throughout the 20 and 50 years of the Republic. The big idea is put under pressure during the Civil War. Then we had other crises. We had the Gilded Age, then the Depression, and then the turmoil of the 1960s. So what we're seeing now is not new. America has gone through different crises. The problem is, in the past, Americans were always able to find an energy and a resilience to move from a moment of rupture into reconstruction.
Yeah.
Right now we're seeing rupture. We don't know when reconstruction will come and how. Just to talk about the current situation, what I see is a very dangerous mix of two historical moments. One is a sort of political repression similar to the McCarthyism phenomenon of the 50s, happening at the same time as social turmoil and violence, which is reminiscent of the turmoil of the 1960s. Yes. To many historians, that decade was a second undeclared civil war in America. So we have the 50s and the 60s combined at the same time, and I think it's dangerous. So violence and political repression. If you add the international outlook to that, there's a big risk for America, which is the de-dollarization of trade. If that happens, again, we can't predict. We don't know if it's going to happen. But if it does, then America is heading into difficult times, for sure. And again, hard to predict. If I may suggest a couple of readings there, again, about dystopian literature. There are two books that read today are scarily reminiscent of the current situation. One is Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here, 1935. He imagined America turning into a totalitarian state. Yeah. And the other one is a less-known novel called Men in the Dark by Paul Auster in 2007. And there we have an invented contemporary civil war where America breaks up into three states. One is the United States of America, which is what remains of the current Union. The other one is the independent state of America in the north, and another one called Pacifica in the west. So it's fascinating readings about, imagined futures.
So not the South. So the South is part of the United States of America. And then
That's
you have Pacifica and, what was it, the Independent, which is the Northwest?
North Midwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, I must read that book. I'm intrigued to know how they deal with all of the practical issues of dividing the country like that, and what to do with the population displacement and so on. Anyway, it's an intriguing counterfactual to think about. Let's continue with America, but here on Presidency, pending, upending, we're always interested in comparing America to other countries. So let's think about what's happening in the U.S. as compared to what's happening in other countries. And I know, Adriano, that you've been thinking and written about populism in America and Italy, as demonstrated by the rise of Donald Trump to the American presidency and Giorgia Meloni to the Italian prime ministership. Can you tell our listeners, what do you see as the similarities and differences between the populisms in these countries?
Look, America and Italy are two very different realities. They have a big, huge, a long history of mutual respect and admiration. I like to joke with my students and I say Italians invented America because we discovered it with Cristoforo Colombo and we named it with Amerigo Vespucci. But and then Thomas Jefferson traveled to Italy before he became president, and then he built his mansion following the Palladian Italian architecture. And there are many other examples there. But
and I've been told on many occasions while in America that Americans invented pizza. So this works both ways.
In Connecticut, yes. Yes, they have. And then we imported that to Italy in a place called Naples.
Precisely.
The countries politically are very different. And again, because there are two different cultures. But there are several similarities. Look, if I may something about politics in Italy, we'll say one thing that sounds probably counterintuitive, it goes against common wisdom, and that is Italy has always been ahead of time with its politics. It's always been a political laboratory. For good or bad reasons, it's always been a place of new ideas that have been tested into political experiments. Italy got there to totalitarianism 10 years before Germany. Throughout the mid-century, we had a big Christian Democrat culture that was an interesting blend of conservatism and social democracy. And then again, other European countries did that later. Think of, again, Germany with Angela Merkel much later in the early 2000s. We've had the rise of political movements on the internet. And one of the movements won the elections in 2018, which is quite extraordinary. And in the 90s, we had a Trump-like figure that took power, Silvio Berlusconi, an entrepreneur and a populist. An attention-seeking politician. And for 20 years, the political debate in Italy revolved around that person. Just like it's happening right now in America with Trump. The effect was it eroded the interest of Italians for politics. They grew tired of that. And that's visible in the voter turnout these days, which used to be really high before Berlusconi. After him, it went down. But what Berlusconi did, I think, he changed Italy anthropologically. He brought in a culture of individualism and an interest for wealth, for money. As we didn't know that very well. Italians traditionally are collectivists rather than individualists and parsimonious people. So he brought in a certain level of Americanization of the Italian culture, and he changed the country. And so I see a lot of similarities between him and Trump. So to answer your question now, Meloni and Trump. Meloni certainly shares a lot of worldviews with Trump. But her background is completely different. She is not from the entrepreneurial world. She's a middle-class person who, since a young age, has been a political activist. And she grew up around political ideas that her supporters call conservatism, her detractors call neo-fascism. So different background. One similarity with Trump, she won the elections attracting angry voters. She was elected in 2022 with the lowest turnout at the ballots in the history of the Italian Republic, it was 60%. And she won on promises of a nationalist and sovereign agenda, so more independence from big actors in the international arena. She disattended all those things. She is very loyal to the European Union and very loyal to the Atlantic Alliance. Okay. But the magical thing is that she is convinced her voters that she's doing what they are asking her to do. And so she has this ability, like Trump, to twist reality and convince the electorate that what she's doing is in their interest. Even though we know very well, we saw with Trump and the big, beautiful bill, that they also take decisions that go against their own voters. So that's the one similarity that I see in the politics of Meloni and Trump, that ability to communicate a different sort of parallel reality.
Yeah, both extremely talented communicators.
Absolutely.
Although they communicate differently. Thank you for pointing out those parallels. Let's now bring Australia into the conversation. How does it compare to Italy and America and their experiences? Is populism something we should worry about in this country, or are there reasons to think that Australia might be protected from populism, or at least as it's taken center stage in other countries?
Populism is something that all countries should worry about. Populism in its negative definition. The rise of demagogues who promise something and then do something else. But Australia at the moment is shielded from that. And I would say that's because Australia, unlike Italy, is not traditionally has not been a place for new radical ideas. Or Australia has done some important new things in the world, like the same-sex marriage and recently the ban on social media. But traditionally, unlike Italy, Australia is not that political laboratory for new ideas turned into experiments, political experiments. So that confers a degree of stability and predictability in this country. And in May, we saw an electorate that is very pragmatic. They didn't listen to the calls of some populist political actors, and they voted for the party that they thought was the most moderate. And so what is shielding Australia from populism? Many different things. Again, I don't have an answer, but probably the economy is stronger than in other places. There is a reasonably good redistribution of wealth in this country through a welfare system and social policies. And also there's a cultural explanation. Again, we have little interest in change. We like to maintain the status quo. And again, there's a great book, great novel that talks about that for Australia, and it's My Brother Jack by George Johnston. Fantastic book. And if you read it now, it talks about Australia 100 years ago, but it really talks about a culture that is happy with what, a nation that is happy with what they have, and they don't want to change it. And that's, I guess, the strength of Australia. And maybe that's what's keeping it safe from populism for the moment. But I should leave these kind of considerations to proper and more qualified Australianists.
Well, we appreciate your comparative insights. I think that's really helpful. And certainly there would be a lot of people who would agree with you about how you've described Australian culture and how it differs from the more, I suppose, radical, turbulent, changeable cultures of the other countries, and particularly at moments such as this, maybe being deeply anchored and tethered and stable is perhaps more a virtue than it is a vice. Maybe not always, but certainly at the current moment.
It certainly is.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on political, cultural, historical thoughts. As a parting question, which we're hoping to ask every guest, you happen to be the very first one who's going to be confronting this question, but we'll ask it of every guest. We want to ask the following. Many of our listeners are young adults making big decisions about their future in education, employment, and so on. If you could go back in time, Adriano, what useful piece of advice would you give to your 22 or 23-year-old self?
So this is a great question. And I hope your next guests will provide wise and thoughtful advice, because the one I'm going to provide now is the one that parents don't want to hear, which is have fun. It's the best time of your life. Don't waste your 20s worrying about things that you will worry about for the rest of your life. The mortgage, the job, the money. Just have fun. It's a great time. Travel, see the world, learn languages. It's fantastic, because that's how you make friends. Develop that human warmth around you, and study for pleasure. Learn for pleasure, not for the job or for the certificate. Those things will come. So read, learn, travel, have fun, make friends, and I think that's how you really accumulate some wealth, a treasure that will stay with you for the rest of your life. So that's my piece of advice, which is quite irresponsible. But I think that's what I would tell that 22, 23-year-old Adriano today.
Amazing. And I actually think very consistent with your cultural explanation. In a sense, you're building your individual cultural resources through your strategy. Though I'm thinking we might need to begin this episode with a parental warning. Parents beware of the advice coming at the end of the show. Anyway, we will stop there. Adriano, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on Presidency Pending, Presidency Upending. It's been such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Zim, and thanks to the listeners as well. It's been a great experience. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this pod. Please share it with your friends, family, enemies, anyone in your cultural circle. We really appreciate your support. And please tune in again soon for more content from Season 2 of Presidency Upending.